I've got nothing to play on my phone, unfortunately, or any 80s pop. Certainly not any early 80s pop. But we won't go there. So my name's Neil Mosley. I work in the Centre for Education, Sport and Innovation, and me and Anne from the Centre for Medical Education are just going to share some of our experiences around online education. So I think it's probably fair to say we're both pretty strong advocates of online and distance education, but we're coming at it from probably slightly different experiences, but hopefully pretty complementary experiences. So I guess just the important subtext really is that online learning is growing, and I think to a certain extent seeing more appetite for that in the university in some places. I guess there's a few different reasons for that. The ubiquity of technology in our society these days, but also things like a growing demand for flexible learning, particularly if you're working full-time or part-time. And there's also evidence of a growing global demand for education that online can meet and bricks and mortar might not necessarily be able to. So these figures are relate to a bunch of platforms that came up around 2012 that partnered with universities to offer online education. And these figures as of the end of 2018, so you can see some pretty significant growth over those 6 years. In terms of the number of universities engaging with these platforms, the number of courses and the number of students. Since 2013, the university's been working with one of those providers called Futurelearn to deliver online education. And I help lead that work and work with academics on designing and delivering courses through that platform. And so I guess what I'm keen to do is really just explore one of our most recent courses, which was a course in geology with some academics from the School of Earth and Ocean Sciences, to just kind of draw out some experiences, some lessons, some things that might be helpful in terms of thinking about online education, but I think there's applicability if you're thinking about blended or even actually in your own a more traditional mode of education as well. And to do that, I just want to put on screen a few of the comments from learners at the end of the course. So I've just got 4 comments here. We had quite a lot of really, really positive comments for this course, but I just want to kind of draw out those, and so you can actually hear from learners a little bit, albeit via a slide. So this is Barbara talking about the interest and engagement that the course fostered and the high level of interest. The way that the course was accessible to a broad demographic of students, and talks about engaging, enthralling, enhancing learning. There's a couple more comments here talking about how the course was well constructed, how the combination of the sequence of content and the involvement of educators helped to create a bit of a community, which is a really, really important facet of online education. It can sometimes feel a bit of a lonely place, I think, for learners. And also talking about the structure, helping to engender discussion as well. And the last one here is just talking about how everything was balanced, how the activities, the content, the engagement and participation from educators really helped to create a really good learning environment. So learners talk pretty positively about these things, which I think we'd all want to hear from students at the end of courses, right? Anyone jealous? And there's lots of different reasons why, and lots of contributing factors as to why that is the case in online education. But I just want to kind of pick up on just one particular thing that maybe is a bit abstract and a bit of a subtlety at first, but hopefully as we kind of talk a little bit about it might become a bit clearer about what I'm talking about, and that's orientation, which can mean lots of different things, but for me it's about a coherence to the online course. If you think about it, the students don't have the lecturer right there, or don't have the same kind of relationship, so they're going into a digital environment, and if that's not coherent for them, then that's problematic. What I'm talking about more specifically is things about how we title content, how we sequence things, how we draw explicit and implicit links, how we explain things, how we frame discussion questions, how we frame activities, how we basically create a coherent whole to courses. And I guess in online education, because it's all in that space, there's a lot of subtleties that, if you add them together, are much greater than the sum of their parts. So time doesn't allow for a huge discussion on this, but one technique that I found useful and helpful to think about unifying courses is this idea of having a narrative, and it's something that Futurelearn are quite strong on. One of the things that's encouraged is maybe framing a course around a big picture question, or having different sub-narratives. This could be something where there's a linkage a little bit with the theme of authentic learning. Your course might teach a student a particular skill, but how is that relevant to a particular problem in the world or a particular challenge in society? So one of the things that we did for the geology course was we had learning outcomes, we had demonstrable learning outcomes that could be measured, but we also had a number of sub-narratives, a number of questions. What is an extreme version of an earthquake or a volcano, and what's a regular version, and what does that mean? How can we juxtapose natural events with the kind of things that we're doing to our environment? We had that all throughout, and we almost referred to that in the same way you might do a set of learning outcomes to create coherence and a journey and a clear path. And it really helped us in lots of different ways in terms of having engaging titles, so that learners can kind of work through that and they're engaged with that sort of thing. Being able to provide a bit of contextual text, particularly to long chunks of text, because we had a bit of a narrative to say, actually we need to introduce this and frame it into the context of where learners are going. And so often online courses can be an article here and a download here and a video here without any coherence. Helped us make summaries around content in the same way that contextual knowledge provides the information prior to engaging with the content. The summaries helped a little bit as well. And just a lot of this is writing, actually, and writing in a way to engender progression, because we knew where the story was going to end up and where it was going to go. So it's a little bit abstract. I think hopefully you get the idea of the importance of coherence, particularly in an online space. And this is one way in which you can start to think about it when you evaluate what you're putting together. And so before I hand over to Anne, I just want to leave you a few questions that you might want to think about. Would you actually be able to reframe components of your course in this way? Would you? It's not always that easy, actually. If your course is sort of like, very, introduction to this concept. How could you figure that out in terms of a narrative or a real world problem? For someone coming in from the outside, how would they grasp what your course is about? It's not about dumbing down. It's just about coherence, really. Would they be able to get what it's about? And then just looking at really, are we providing students enough contextual knowledge to work their way through the course, to understand what's being taught and where they're going? So yeah, I hope that's useful. I'm going to hand over to Anne now, who's going to kind of share her experiences around online education, but I hope that's some things to kind of take away and have a think about. Thanks.
Afternoon. So I changed all of our programmes from taught to e-learning in about 2008. And I think trying to make an authentic online experience for students is very important, and it does take a lot of thought. It's not as simple as just chucking a load of lectures on Learning Central and letting them get along with it. In fact, we found that we spent more time engaging with our students once we went to e-learning than we did beforehand. So the contact hours that we use for e-learning, things like face-to-face virtual meetings via Collaborate, Skype, etc. We email, we have lots of discussion board threads, which I'll show you in a minute, to actually mimic coffee rooms, chat lines, ask the expert, comment on debates, etc. We have a very much broad themes around the assessments we use, so students can actually have authentic responses to their assessments, so they can actually, although the assessment is very broad, they can actually articulate their own aims within that. So we get them to test the water with their aims in a peer-supported way. We use blogs and wikis as assessment tools, and we have academic support for achievements and buddying groups where we actually use Collaborate for that. Non-contact learning, libraries, podcasts, recorded lectures, PowerPoints, the usual stuff that you'll see. We're very much lucky to have Alan Theo Fernandes and his team working with us and advising us what we can do, helping us to troubleshoot, and the whole learning technology team actually give us valuable insights into what we can actually use. And as Alan will tell you, probably about only 25% of the what Learning Central can do is actually used. So this is kind of an example of discussion boards. This allows for threaded discussions. You can split up the boards into various forums. It's purposely blurred so you can't see what the students are saying, but there's coffee rooms, student staff panels, student reps, case study discussions. We've got videos that we show with clinicians interviewing people with pain, and they comment. We have very set parameters for responding, so we will respond within 48 hours, and students have a very clear idea about what they can and can't do on discussion boards. So again, this is just some of the things that we use discussion boards for. We use blogs where we kind of get students to dissect a particular problem or dissect a case study and actually build up a blog of activity, and this is both formative and summative feedback is given on these blogs. So they're assessed on the blog postings throughout throughout the module, and they can learn from that rather than actually getting to the end of the module and they've may have made fundamental mistakes which haven't picked up early. So it's kind of continual learning through the programme. We use wikis. Again, this is blurred, but you can see that each student has a different colour code. Again, it's usually to come up with some kind of activity like a poster that they can present as a group at a conference. These are usually assessed by the faculty, but also there's peer assessment as well for the group work as part of the programme. There's a very valuable book here that I've used and our team uses, is actually Rethinking Pedagogy for a Digital Age. I would really recommend that. And there's some references if you want to explore e-learning. So it's very much a whistle-stop tour of e-learning, but hopefully it kind of gives you the flavour that it's not just about shoving a load of lectures online and letting students get on with them. Thank you.
Stopping the university doing this on a whole scale?
I think if people are fearful, people don't know what learning technology, what Learning Central has on offer. I don't think academics tend to use learning technologists such as Alan and my colleague here appropriately, or I think they just think they're technicians, and when something goes wrong we go, Theo, come and help, or Alan, come and where they're very skilled practitioners that can actually teach us to think innovatively about the way we're developing. And I think it's having the confidence to explore and maybe remove bits, and people will say, well, ours is a face-to-face programme, but what about using this before they get to the face-to-face as a flipped teaching activity? Or what about using it after to consolidate what they're thinking, run discussion boards? So we could, after the CSI conference, set up a discussion board so people can keep going on the threads, keep looking at activities, keep sharing best practice. Not that I'm telling you your job. But
I think there's a couple of other broader issues. I still think in universities it's still viewed as the second class option, I think, and I think there's still a sense in which the online distance learners aren't really our students. A little bit, I think that's problematic. Why would we do online? We're a Russell Group university, why would we do that? Why would we give provision to these people that maybe don't fit our idea of what a student at our university should be?
I mean, we had to change because we're a healthcare provider of education, and people are no longer being released from the NHS, so we had to move. But it is about building a sense of a community of learning that is equal.
What are you doing with these?
Oh, we need to give them to Robin. So if we pop them on the front and then we can collect them all up. Yeah, you can stop it.